Absolute power is supposed to build empires, not fuel psychotic hobbies. But when Roman emperors got bored, they didn't just doodle. They declared war on the ocean, tried to make horses politicians, and held farting contests at state dinners. Forget grand strategy. This is a deep dive into 33 moments when the rulers of the world behaved like complete absolute idiots. 1. If you think your buddy's garage band is bad, you should have been at one of Nero's concerts. This guy was so convinced he was a musical prodigy that he'd put on 12-hour marathon shows of his own terrible singing and poetry. But he knew his art was an acquired taste. So he'd have the doors to the theater locked. You were in there for the long haul. It wasn't just a concert. It was a psychological endurance test set to bad music. It got so bad that people literally started faking their own deaths. Like going limp, having their friends cry over them, just so their corpses could be carried out by accomplices. That's not a bad review. That's a survival strategy. He probably saw them and thought, wow, my voice is literally slaying them. I'm killing it out here. 2. Up next is Emperor Elagabalus, who was basically a frat bro given an empire. For him, the peak of high culture wasn't poetry or music. It was a good old-fashioned farting contest. At his lavish state dinners, he would turn to the most powerful, dignified senators in Rome and announce a competition to see who could produce the most impressive gas. Points were likely awarded for volume, duration, and sheer audacity. The awkward silence in between performances must have been deafening. This wasn't a suggestion. You had the choice of participating in the imperial toot-off or, probably facing a much worse kind of wind. This is what happens when you give a teenager with the sense of humor of a 12-year-old the nuclear codes. Forget policy debates. The most important issue in Rome was who had beans for lunch. 3. As a military strategist, Caligula was, let's say, experimental. In one of his most brilliant tactical masterstrokes, he ordered an entire legion of his personal guards to march backward for an entire week. Not as a punishment, but because he thought it looked funny and might confuse the enemy. The only people who were confused were his own soldiers, who were now stumbling around like they were in a Benny Hill sketch, bumping into columns, falling into fountains, and probably marching straight into enemy territory butt first. It's a logistical nightmare of epic proportions, turning the most feared army in the world into a clumsy conga line of failure. It's a miracle they didn't accidentally march themselves off a cliff. The enemy probably saw them coming and was too bewildered to even attack. 4. Alright, let's get weird. And by weird, I mean pants-wettingly terrifying. Emperor Domitian decided to throw a dinner party, and his idea of a fun theme was existential dread. He brought his guests into a room that was completely black. Black walls, black table, black food, which was likely dyed with squid ink, making every bite a terrifying gamble. Then, each senator noticed a mini tombstone next to his plate with his own name carved on it. He just let them sit there in pure, silent horror for hours, sweating, probably having flashbacks of their entire lives, fully convinced they were about to be executed. Then, after enjoying their suffering for a sufficient amount of time, Domitian just pops out and goes, "Gotcha." What a prankster. That's not a joke. That's a therapy bill waiting to happen for an entire generation of politicians. 5. Caligula is back, and this time he's tackling HR. He loved his horse, Incitatus, more than any human, which, to be fair, is understandable. He gave the horse a marble stable, an ivory trough, a jewel-encrusted collar, the works. The horse ate better than 99% of the population. Then, he decided the horse was ready for a promotion. A big one. He seriously planned to appoint Incitatus as a consul, the highest job in government. His political platform probably consisted of more oats and fewer taxes on hay. This was the ancient equivalent of making your golden retriever the new CEO. It was his ultimate power move to tell the Senate, "My horse is smarter than all of you." And the funniest part? He might not have been wrong. At least the horse wouldn't start a war with the ocean. 6. Some people get really into cosplay. Emperor Commodus, however, took it to a whole new level. He was so obsessed with the myth of Hercules that he decided he just was Hercules now. It was his whole personality. He'd walk around the palace wearing nothing but a lion skin and carrying a giant club, demanding people worship him as a living god. He even officially changed his name on state documents to the Roman Hercules. This wasn't a weekend thing. This was his 24/7 identity. Imagine him trying to solve a famine by attempting to wrestle it into submission. You just have to nod along and hope he doesn't ask you to go fight a hydra with him, because you know he'd make you do all the real work while he posed for the statues. 7. Caligula, the gift that keeps on giving, apparently thought Roman sports were getting a little stale. His solution? He replaced the ball in their games with a live octopus. Let that sink in. This wasn't just a game. It was like dodgeball, but the ball is angry, slimy, and actively trying to ink you in the eye. A bunch of dudes are trying to play, maybe something like handball, and instead of a ball, they have to catch and throw a flailing 8-armed sea monster. You can just picture it. One guy gets a tentacle to the face, another gets sprayed with ink, and the octopus is probably having the worst day of its life. For Caligula, this wasn't about athletic skill. It was about watching people get wrecked by calamari. The cleanup afterwards must have been an absolute nightmare. 8. Just when you thought Elagabalus couldn't get any more unhinged, he looked at the gladiatorial games and said, "You know what this needs? More snakes." The crowd was probably just settling in with their snacks, ready for a nice afternoon of state-sanctioned violence. Then, during a packed event at the Colosseum, he ordered his minions to dump baskets full of venomous snakes from the roof down onto the crowd. He wasn't trying to assassinate anyone specific. He was just bored and thought it would be a riot to watch thousands of people panic and run for their lives from a sudden snake storm. He was likely leaning over the edge of his imperial box, eating popcorn and watching his own citizens flee in terror. It's like a gender reveal party gone horribly, horribly wrong, directed by a psychopath. 9. So, what does the most powerful man on Earth do with his free time? Does he read? Practice sword fighting? Nope. If you're Emperor Domitian, your hobby is being a total psycho in your bedroom. He would spend hours every single day, alone, meticulously catching flies and then stabbing them to death one by one with a sharpened stylus. This wasn't pest control. This was his version of building a ship in a bottle, but for serial killers. His guards would stand outside the door, hearing the faint, frantic buzzing. Then a sudden silence, followed by a soft, victorious grunt. It's like finding out the president spends 8 hours a day in the Oval Office just popping bubble wrap, one bubble at a time. You have to wonder what they told people. Sorry, the senator from Gaul can't see you right now. Emperor Domitian has cornered a particularly wily housefly and needs to concentrate. The fate of the empire could wait. 10. You think today's social media influencers are extra? They've got nothing on Emperor Nero. This guy was so convinced he was the main character of reality that he hired a troupe of actors to follow him around all day and provide a live soundtrack to his life. Seriously. He'd walk into a room and a guy with a drum would go, "Bum, bum, bum." He'd be trying to think, and a dude would start playing a thoughtful little melody on a flute. You just know he had different themes for different moods. There was probably a dramatic, "I've been betrayed" sting for when his toast was slightly burnt. Can you imagine the pressure on those musicians? One wrong note and you're fired, or worse. What's the musical cue for, "I'm about to have you executed"? It's the ultimate form of narcissism. He wasn't just living his life, he was producing it in real time, for an audience of one. 11. If you think your corporate icebreakers are bad, be glad you didn't work for Emperor Septimius Severus. Before he would start any important Senate meetings, he would force all the senators, these are the most powerful, aristocratic men in Rome, into a giant chicken coop. And they couldn't come out until they all started clucking like chickens. You can just picture the scene, the stench of hay and poultry, grown men in expensive togas squatting uncomfortably, practicing their bok-boks. It's the kind of power trip you'd expect from a camp counselor, not the ruler of an empire. You just know Severus was judging them. Senator Maximus, your clucking lacks enthusiasm. No legislative proposals for you this week. It was his way of reminding them that no matter their wealth or status, he could reduce them to barnyard animals whenever he felt like it. 12. After his brilliant idea to make his horse a politician, Caligula apparently decided to continue his animal-based HR strategy. For one glorious day, he appointed his pet monkey as the head of the Praetorian Guard. He even had a tiny custom-made uniform for the little guy, complete with a miniature sword it probably just used to pick its teeth. The actual human commanders of this elite military force were ordered to take commands from this monkey, which presumably consisted of screeching, throwing its own poop, and demanding more bananas. Imagine the dead-eyed stare of a veteran general, a man who survived countless battles, as he has to salute a monkey who is currently trying to wear its own tail as a hat. This wasn't just insulting, it was a masterclass in psychological warfare against his own security team. It's not a government, that's a failed sitcom pilot that gets more insane with every detail you uncover. 13. Elagabalus is back, and he's still channeling the energy of the most annoying kid in class. During super serious Senate meetings, while men were debating the fate of the empire, he would get bored and start slipping live mice into the folds of their togas. Imagine you're in the middle of a passionate speech about military funding, and suddenly you feel a little furry creature running up your leg. You'd have a room full of the world's most powerful men screaming and swatting at their own clothes like they're in a cartoon. For Elagabalus, this wasn't about politics. It was about turning the Roman Senate into his personal prank show. 14. We all have that one feature we're proud of. For Emperor Commodus, it was, for some reason, his ear. He was so incredibly proud of one of his ears that he decided the entire city of Rome needed to appreciate it. So he commissioned a 50-foot-tall, solid gold statue of it. Not his face, not his whole body in a heroic pose. Just a giant, gleaming golden ear. It's such a bafflingly specific display of vanity. It's like a modern celebrity commissioning a skyscraper-sized statue of their favorite nostril. What were citizens supposed to say? Have you seen the emperor's ear today? The morning sun really captures its magnificent lobe. 15. You know you've reached a level of wealth where money has no meaning when you get bored of jewels. This was Caligula's reality. He had so many pearls that he literally got tired of looking at them. So he invented a new game called Let's Throw Priceless Treasure into the Ocean. He would take handfuls of pearls, each one worth a small fortune, and just chuck them into the sea, presumably laughing like a maniac. This is the ancient equivalent of a billionaire buying a Lamborghini just to drive it off a cliff because he's bored of red. It's a level of rich person ennui that is just staggering. 16. Emperor Nero, ever the artist, apparently looked up at the sky one day and decided that Rome's pigeon population was simply too drab. It was aesthetically displeasing to him. His solution? He ordered that every single pigeon in the city of Rome be captured and painted purple. Think about the logistics of that. He paid an army of people to run around the city with nets and buckets of purple dye, trying to catch and beautify thousands of what are essentially flying rats. It's like if your local homeowners association suddenly decided all squirrels must be bedazzled. It's pointless, expensive, and a perfect example of a man with way too much power and way too much time on his hands. 17. Every world leader needs a sounding board, a voice of reason. Emperor Caligula had one too, except his was a small, tattered piece of a child's teddy bear. He carried this thing everywhere, not as a cute keepsake, but as his senior political strategist. We're talking major state meetings where generals are sweating over battle plans, and Caligula stops everything, holds up this piece of fluff and says, "Excellent point, General. But what does Sir Reginald Paddington think?" He would then force the most decorated military minds in the world to formally ask this scrap of fabric for its opinion on troop movements. This is a level of insanity that breaks your brain. These men had to stand there, look a teddy bear in its cold, dead button eyes and pretend to receive profound wisdom. It's like your country being run by a magic 8-ball, but with more fluff and way more executions. 18. Elagabalus wasn't just an emperor. He was a failed Vegas show producer with an unlimited budget. He had a private zoo, but looking at animals was boring, so he decided to make them performers. He took his massive, terrifying bears and forced them into a dance troupe. But the real genius of his stupidity was the wardrobe. He made them wear the actual helmets of his Praetorian Guard. Let that sink in. The helmet, the sacred symbol of Rome's most elite soldiers, was now a goofy prop for a furry, two-stepping idiot at a palace party. Can you imagine the humiliation for those soldiers? Hey, isn't that your helmet? Yeah, that's Bartholomew the Bear. He's got a big show tonight. Does great work with the foxtrot. This is a level of disrespect so profound it's almost art. 19. Caligula never emotionally graduated from kindergarten, and he subjected the entire Roman elite to his twisted playtime. One of his favorite activities was forcing the oldest, most powerful senators to play hide-and-seek with him, which is already weird enough. But he insisted on playing at night, in his gigantic pitch-black palace. This wasn't a game. It was a low-budget horror film. Picture yourself as a 70-year-old senator named Cassius, crammed into a decorative urn, breathing shallowly, listening to the footsteps of the insane god emperor echoing on the marble floors. What are the rules here? If he finds you, does he giggle and say tag? Or does he just stab you for being a bad hider? It's the ultimate no-win situation. It's like being hunted by a toddler with a god complex and a knife. 20. We've established that Elagabalus had the humor of a backed-up sewer pipe. After mastering the art of the fart contest, he moved his focus to the other end of the assembly line. He created the Roman Belching Olympics. Following a massive feast, he would have his dinner guests, dignified nobles and politicians, compete to see who could produce the most epic, gut-wrenching burp. You just know there was a judge, probably some poor guy with a clipboard, scoring them on volume, duration, and artistic expression. A solid 8.5 for Senator Gaius. Good resonance, but a bit lacking in the finish. It's like he was on a quest to systematically demolish every shred of human dignity in the empire, one bodily noise at a time. This wasn't just an empire, it was a high school locker room with better architecture. 21. Nero's narcissism was so powerful, it should have been classified as a weather event. Standard statues of himself just weren't cutting it. They were too static, too humble. So he ordered his engineers to create animatronic Neros. He had statues built with articulated arms on some kind of hidden lever system, so they could mechanically wave at people walking by. It's the desperate, pathetic cry for attention of a man who needed constant validation from everyone and everything, including his own stone replicas. Imagine the poor Roman trying to go about his day, and a 7-foot marble Nero gives him this creepy, slow, jerky wave. You don't wave back. You just walk faster and pray it doesn't follow you. He basically invented the world's first Chuck E. Cheese robot, but for his own ego. 22. Caligula was the kind of guy who would get into a fight with his own reflection. One day, he just decided, for no reason at all, that he was personally offended by the color blue. Not that he disliked it, he was declaring a holy war on it. He issued an imperial edict officially banning the color. This effectively made the sky and the ocean illegal. How do you even begin to enforce that? Did he have soldiers stationed on the coast, writing tickets to the waves for being too blue? Did he try to put a giant tarp over the sky? This is a level of impotent rage that is just beautiful to behold. He was the world's first and most powerful Karen, demanding to speak to the manager of physics and have a primary color removed from the visible spectrum because it displeased him. 23. If you thought your boss's team-building exercises were bad, Caligula would like a word. He looked at chess, a game of quiet intellect, and thought, this needs more public humiliation. So he forced his generals to play, but instead of little wooden pieces, they used real soldiers. And every time a piece was captured, the soldier it represented was immediately pulled off the board and assigned a soul-crushing punishment, like being forced to polish the palace latrines with their own tunic. This transformed a game of strategy into the world's most stressful management simulation. Every move you make could sentence a guy named Tiberius, a perfectly nice father of 3, to a week of misery because you suck at chess. It's not a game, it's a moral nightmare with a checkmate at the end. 24. Elagabalus treated running an empire like it was a never-ending, mandatory costume party from hell. He decreed that at all official functions, his waitstaff must be composed entirely of senators dressed as figures from mythology. This wasn't optional. Imagine trying to negotiate a trade deal while the Minister of Finance, uncomfortably shoved into a cheap centaur costume with the horse butt part sagging, is trying to serve you wine. Or asking for more bread from a man dressed as Pan, complete with furry leggings and a set of plastic horns he clearly bought at a discount. It was a masterstroke of psychological warfare designed to remind everyone that no matter how powerful they thought they were, he could make them look like complete and utter fools at a moment's notice. It wasn't government, it was a demeaning dinner theater production, and everyone had a role. 25. Emperor Domitian was a deeply paranoid and insecure man, but he also had a flair for the dramatic. He would frequently summon the most powerful witches and soothsayers in the land to his dark, spooky palace for a private consultation. These mystics would arrive, expecting to be asked about the future of the empire, the loyalty of the legions, or the threat of barbarian invasions. Instead, after a long, tense silence, Domitian would lean forward and ask them an earth-shattering question like, "In your professional opinion, does my nose look too big from this angle?" Or, "Use your scrying pool to tell me if this new hairstyle makes my forehead look fat." You have to imagine the sheer whiplash for these soothsayers. They came prepared to channel ancient spirits and ended up being unpaid style consultants for a tyrant with the self-esteem of a middle schooler on picture day. It's a miracle one of them didn't just say, "The spirits say you need a new hobby, dude." 26. While other emperors were building aqueducts or reforming laws, Emperor Carinus was focused on more important things, running an illegal fight club in his own palace. Every single night, he would gather his own bodyguards, the guys literally paid to take a spear for him, and challenge them to no-holds-barred fistfights. This put his security detail in the ultimate workplace dilemma. If you let the emperor win, you look weak and he might fire you for being a terrible bodyguard. But if you actually knock out the most powerful man in the world, well, you're probably not going to see your next paycheck or daylight for that matter. It was the worst possible team-building exercise. You can just picture the morning after meetings, with the entire Praetorian Guard sporting black eyes and busted lips, while Carinus sits on the throne with a smug grin, acting like he just conquered Gaul all by himself. 27. Elagabalus was so fantastically rich and so terminally bored that he decided to start commissioning new animals, as if he were ordering a custom car. He put out a bounty, offering a fortune to any man who could invent a completely new and preferably useless creature. After what must have been a lot of failed prototypes, some absolute genius showed up at the palace. The man had just taken a lizard, glued some bird wings to its back, and presented it to the emperor as the majestic and previously undiscovered sky lizard. And Elagabalus, the connoisseur of all things idiotic, absolutely loved it. He probably paraded it around, showed it off at parties, and gave the inventor a promotion to head of completely made-up zoology. This wasn't just a man with too much money. This was a man actively trying to make reality dumber, one poorly crafted lizard at a time. 28. Great poets are inspired by love, war, nature, or tragedy. The poets in Emperor Caligula's court, however, were given a slightly less epic subject: his big toes. Caligula was so immensely proud of his royal feat that he forced the most talented writers in Rome to compose long, flowing odes celebrating their magnificence. This is a level of artistic torture that is hard to comprehend. Imagine being a poet, a master of words, and having to spend your afternoon searching for new ways to describe a toenail. Oh, majestic digit, so powerful and grand, the finest appendage in all of the land. Your knuckle so noble, your nail bed divine. You just know they were crying into their scrolls at night, their talent withering away as they tried to figure out what rhymes with cuticle. It was a creative black hole from which no dignity could escape. 29. Most rulers fight wars against other nations. Emperor Domitian, a true innovator in the field of conflict, declared war on his own shadow. This wasn't a one-time thing, it was his afternoon workout. He would go out into the palace gardens, sword in hand, and spend hours furiously attacking the dark patch on the ground that followed him everywhere. He would lunge, parry, and shout insults at it, presumably for being so sneaky and persistent. The palace guards just had to stand there and watch the leader of the known world having a life-or-death struggle with a basic principle of light physics. You have to wonder if he ever claimed victory. Men, I have done it. The darkness has retreated. For now. Stay vigilant. It will return when I turn around again. This is what happens when your brain officially clocks out for good. 30. Elagabalus decided to bring the excitement of a game show to his people, but with his signature sociopathic flair. He created the imperial lottery, which sounds fun until you read the fine print. There was only one grand prize: complete freedom from slavery or debt. Every other ticket, however, was a prize of a different sort. We're talking prizes like a dozen angry hornets, 3 dead rats, or a week of being publicly flogged. It was the ultimate game of Russian roulette, where you had a 1 in a million chance of winning your life back and a 99.9% chance of winning a bucket of scorpions. It's such a purely evil and creative form of psychological torture, turning the concept of hope into a cruel joke for his own sick amusement. He was basically the world's first and worst TV game show host. 31. So, Emperor Caligula is having a bad day. His big invasion of Britain is a total flop. Does he retreat and rethink his strategy like a normal general? Of course not. He marches his entire army, thousands of guys in full battle armor, to the beach, points at the ocean, and basically says, "That water has been looking at me funny. Get 'em, boys." He then ordered his elite soldiers to declare war on the sea god Neptune and start furiously stabbing the waves. You can just picture the confusion in the ranks, soldiers turning to each other whispering, Are we really doing this?" After they sufficiently killed the water, he declared victory and made them collect seashells as war booty, which he probably paraded through Rome as the spoils of the Atlantic. Imagine your boss making you fight the office printer and then giving you a paperclip as a bonus. That's what happened here, but with an entire army and a severe lack of self-awareness. 32. Emperor Numerian was a man of culture and literature, but he suffered from a very specific and very weird affliction. He got bored with paper. For him, papyrus was just too mainstream, too predictable. So he found a new canvas for his poetic masterpieces: the feet of his advisors. While his most trusted officials were trying to give him serious reports on the state of the empire, Numerian would be sitting on the floor, tickling their feet with a quill, as he inscribed a lovely little poem about their arches. Imagine the sheer, agonizing self-control required from that advisor. You're trying to talk about a potential famine in Egypt, but you can't focus because the emperor is composing a sonnet on your soul, and you're trying desperately not to laugh or accidentally kick the most powerful man on earth directly in the face. 33. This is it. The absolute pinnacle of imperial humiliation. Commodus, not content with merely pretending to be Hercules, decided to treat the Roman Senate to a truly special performance. During a formal session, he would sometimes strip completely naked, cover himself in dust and dirt, and begin to act like a monkey. He would hoot, screech, and crawl around on all fours in front of the most powerful and dignified men in the world. And what did the senators do? They were forced to watch, and even worse, they were forced to applaud this horrifying spectacle. This is the moment where you know the empire has hit rock bottom. When your leaders have to give a standing ovation to their naked boss pretending to be an ape, all semblance of civilization has officially left the building. So the evidence is in. Absolute power doesn't just corrupt, it creates absolute idiots. Now for the real question, and I want you to be honest in the comments, who is a more dangerous leader? The complete moron who declares war on the ocean and promotes his horse? Or the clever sadist who orchestrates psychological torture for fun? The buffoon or the monster? There is no right answer. Start the debate. And if you enjoyed this madness, destroy the like button and subscribe for more history they're too scared to teach you.